Little amens over on the side over here. Was it yesterday, Brother Sundquist, that I saw you? I think I went to Home Depot, and my kids are convinced Brother Sundquist lives at Home Depot, because anytime we go to the Spanaway Home Depot, we see Brother Sundquist. But was walking out of it, and I thought, oh, I think that might be Brother Sundquist walking away. And all of a sudden, Mimi leans around him and waves at me. So it was like, oh, it is Brother Sundquist. And she actually recognized me from across the store. It was great. Daniel chapter 2, when you find your place, if you go ahead and stand, Daniel chapter 2. We're going to start off, we're going to read verses 1 through 13. As we get into the message, we're going to cover the vast majority of this chapter, but I didn't want to have you standing while I read all 49 verses of chapter 2 to get us started off. So we'll read the first 13, and then we will go through the rest as we go. Sorry, Brother Jance, I see you waving at me back there. Daniel chapter 2, starting at verse 1. In the second year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar dreamed dreams wherewith his spirit was troubled, and his sleep brake from him. Then the king commanded to call the magicians and the astrologers and the sorcerers and the Chaldeans for to show the king his dreams. So they came and stood before the king. And the king said unto them, I have dreamed a dream, and my spirit was troubled to know the dream. Then spake the Chaldeans to the king of in Syriac, O king, live forever. Tell thy servants the dream, and we will show the interpretation. The king answered and said to the Chaldeans, the thing is gone from me. If we will not make known unto me the dream with the interpretation thereof, ye shall be cut in pieces, and your houses shall be made a dunghill. But if ye show the dream and the interpretation thereof, ye shall receive of me gifts and rewards and great honor. Therefore show me the dream and the interpretation thereof. They answered again and said, let the king tell his servants the dream, and we will show thee the interpretation of it. The king answered and said, I know of certainty that ye would gain the time, because ye see the thing is gone from me. But if ye will not make known unto me the dream, there is but one decree for you, for ye have prepared lying and corrupt words to speak before me till the time be changed. Therefore tell me the dream, and I shall know that ye can show me the interpretation thereof. The Chaldeans answered the king and said, there is not a man upon the earth that can show the king's matter. Therefore there is no king, lord, nor ruler that asked such things as or at any magician or astrologer or Chaldean. And it is a rare thing that the king requireth, and there is none other that can show it before the king except the gods, who dwell not with flesh. For this cause the king was angry and very furious, and commanded to destroy all the wise men of Babylon. And a decree went forth that the wise men should be slain, and they sought Daniel and his fellows to be slain. Let's go ahead and have a word of prayer. Lord, I want to thank you for the time that we can have in your word this evening. Lord, I thank you for the opportunity I had to be able to study out and prepare for this message, Lord, in the way that you spoke to me through it. Lord, I pray that you will use me this evening, Lord. Help me not to get in the way of what you have for us tonight, Lord. I pray this in your name. Amen. You can go ahead and be seated. So like I said, as we go through the message, I'm going to refer to, we'll read multiple sections of this chapter. I'll refer to some others as we go. What a unique scenario this is. Really, the entire life of Daniel is one unique scenario after another. But this is one more of those. The king has a nightmare, and he doesn't remember it. And he knows this is more than just a bad taco before bed type of nightmare. This isn't something, something happened in my day that got me creeped out, and now I'm dreaming about it. He recognized this is bigger than that God's trying to tell me something, which tells you it must have been something serious that a lost man can tell, hey, this is something important. So he calls together, as we read, he calls together all the wise men. The Bible tells us he called everything from magicians, astrologers, sorcerers, and Chaldeans. So apparently he called everyone except the man of God, which is not uncommon for a lost person to do when seeking for answers, to call everyone except the man of God. And their response is this is a rare thing, king. No one's ever asked anything like this before. So tell us the dream, and we'll tell you the interpretation. But he didn't remember it. And is wise enough to the fact that he knows if I tell you here's what the dream is, you're just going to make something up so that you can tell me. So no, you can tell me what my dream was first, and then I'll know you're real. And when they can't, Bible tells us he gets furious and tells them, since you can't tell me, everyone dies. All the wise men died. So it was very specific in what was going to happen to him. Verse 5, the king answered and said to the Chaldeans, the thing is gone from me. If you will not make known unto me the dream with the interpretation thereof, ye shall be cut in pieces, and your house shall be made a dunghill. That's pretty specific, graphic description of what's going to happen to you. No. Either you tell me my dream and then what it means, or I'm going to cut you in pieces and make your house a dunghill. And when they can't, his response is, everyone dies, including the one who he didn't call. There's your situation, Daniel. This is where Daniel finds himself, because he was not in this room with the magicians and the Chaldeans and all of them. This is the situation he finds himself in, and here is what I want us to see tonight. Where our focus will be tonight is, again, with our series of You Have a Choice, I want us to look at Daniel's choices in a rare situation. I'm getting that out of the passage where they say, and I'll use this phrase a lot, where they say, this is a rare thing. This is not normal what you're asking, king. Daniel's choice in a rare situation. This is a situation that the other wise men said, well, this is rare, king. No one else requires this. They go further to say, no one else can do it. But Daniel recognized, while they are right, no man can, God can. You and I, leading into this message, you and I may not find ourselves in situations that the king says, tell me what I dreamed and what it meant, or I'm going to chop you in pieces. But we do find ourselves in situations that, boy, it's a rare thing. And we look at it and we say, I can't figure out what I'm supposed to do. And we look at it and we think, boy, no man can do this. That's okay, because God can. It's always one of those things. I think we forget. Maybe we just can't wrap our heads around it. That the rare situation that catches you off guard and sends you for a loop and leaves you feeling confused and unsure and knowing, well, I can't do this, that never happens to God. Because he's all-knowing. Things don't catch him off guard. He doesn't get surprised. We look at some of the things that are happening in our world, and it can send us in a panic. There's so much unknown and so much that we can't see how it's gonna end, or so much that was unexpected, but God knew. Or we have situations maybe with family that it catches us off guard and we don't know how to handle it. And maybe there's situations that we think, like the wise men here, that this is a rare thing and a man can't know how to handle this. It's okay because God does. A rare thing is not a rare thing to God. An unexpected thing in your life, God knew it was coming. You've heard the phrase to expect the unexpected. God doesn't have to do that because he knows the unexpected before the unexpected happens. That thing that is too hard for any man to know is not too hard for God. So, what do? Because the reality is that all sounds great. That all sounds great, and honestly, it sounds easy. As a Christian, as anyone who's spent time in church, that's kind of an automatic amen thing. That okay, man can't handle it, but God can. That's as a Christian, that ought to be something that just automatically to us is, yeah, that's right. That all sounds great. It's great that a rare thing is not rare for God, and it's great to have confidence that God knows the unexpected, and it builds me up knowing that God can handle the situations that are beyond what I can even comprehend. But that doesn't mean that it's not still rare and unexpected and hard. In Daniel's case, that's all wonderful things to know about God. That doesn't change the fact they've still ordered Daniel's death. As wonderful as it is to know God knew this was coming and God can interpret the dream, doesn't change the fact that right now, when we stopped in verse 13, the order is still chop Daniel up in pieces and make his house a dunghill. It doesn't change that. So what do you do? I want us to look at the example that we see from Daniel in Daniel chapter 2 and see what Daniel did. I have 4 choices that Daniel made in this rare situation. Number 1, Daniel chose to seek God. Look at verse 14 through 18 with me really quick. I need to find verse 14. There we go. Then Daniel answered with counsel and wisdom to Arioch, the captain of the king's guard, which was gone forth to slay the wise men of Babylon. So, we'll stop for a second. He's answering the man who has come to take him, to kill him. Verse 15, he answered and said to Arioch, the king's captain, why is the decree so hasty from the king? Then Arioch made the thing known to Daniel. Then Daniel went in and desired of the king that he would give him time and that he would show the king the interpretation. Then Daniel went to his house and made the thing known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions, that they would desire mercies of the God of heaven concerning this secret, that Daniel and his fellows should not perish with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. Now look at this. Daniel gets word that you are being sought to be slain. He gets word from the men who are seeking you to slay you. They come to Daniel to gather him and his companions to take him and kill him. And somehow, Daniel has enough clout that though the king has, in his fury, said, we're going to take them all, we're going to chop them in pieces, Daniel is able to say, wait, what's going on? And they answered him. They stopped to answer him, but notice some things. There is no panic. Daniel's just given word, we're taking you back. The king has made a decree, we're taking you back to kill you. After that, he asks, well, why is this decree so hasty? And it tells us they answered him. Here's what happened. And there's no panic. The king gave an order for your death, and their response, me and my army are here to take you back to die. Can I just ask a very real question for a moment? How would you react to that? If they showed up at your door, an army showed up at your door saying, hi, I'm here for you because the king said you have to come back and get chopped in pieces. How would you react to that? I know a lot of Christians who would be up in arms, literally. They'd have the mentality, well, we're stockpiling guns and ammo, and if the government ever comes for me, they're going to have war on their hands. That's not Daniel here. Daniel's government of the day has ordered his death for no wrongdoing of his own. They have ordered an unjust death for Daniel, and Daniel doesn't panic. Daniel doesn't even get mad. Daniel doesn't pull out a weapon and I'm going to fight for my freedom. There's no panic. You can take this how you want it, and I understand people feel differently about this. I'm going to be honest. I don't know how I would respond. I am a red-blooded American. My American side of me says if the government comes to take, my freedom, my life, my guns, my whatever, good luck. But biblically, I have a hard time backing that. That's my American side. That's my, I'm a man. I'm going to defend myself and my family. And if they come, well, you're going to have a hard time getting it. Biblically, there's a really hard time trying to back that. Just looking at, I'll just give you two examples for right now. Looking here at Daniel, Daniel doesn't try to fight and defend himself, though the government of his day had unjustly ordered his death. What about Jesus, who told Peter to put his sword away when the government of his day unjustly ordered his trial and death? Do what you will with that, and I'll be honest, it is something I struggle with that. But just looking at Daniel, he didn't panic when they came to kill him. So what did he do? He just chose to pray. We looked at verse 18 already, that he gathered, verse 17, he gathered Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah together so that they would desire mercies of the God of heaven. Here is a rare situation, completely unexpected. You can't tell me Daniel's just sitting at home waiting for him to show up at his door to bring him in. Completely unexpected, completely out of his control. And Daniel's reaction was, wait, before you take me, give me time to go talk to God. Before I understand the order that was made, before you take me, at least give me time to talk to God. Because Daniel already recognized that God could handle it. Daniel already recognized that God could handle it. God had already proved himself to Daniel when he chose pulse and water over the king's meat. Daniel had already seen God work in what seemed like an impossible situation. So while I am confident Daniel didn't know how God would work here, he knew he would. So he just prayed. His first response was, let me talk to God. Let me desire mercies of God. I have to tell you, that's convicting. Because I think if we're honest in here tonight, praying is somewhere on our list of things we do when we don't know what to do. But it's not very often that it's on the top. It's not very often that it's, hold on, we need to stop everything, including my death order. We need to stop everything so I can talk to God about this. It's pretty often that trying to figure out our own way comes before praying. And it's pretty often that seeking counsel from friends comes before praying. For that matter, it's pretty often that praying doesn't even take place until we already think we have a plan figured out. One example of that, look at, oh man, my mind just went blank. Maybe I won't give you the example that I was thinking of because it's gone. Ishmael and Isaac, their father, somebody, anybody, nobody? Abraham, thank you, who is, boy, I thought someone would give me an answer faster. I remembered it before anyone else said anything. That's shocking. That was waiting for a son and figured out his own way, Ishmael, before ever talking to God, saying, hey, would you just bless what I did? That's often what we'll do. We'll try and figure out, hey, here's my way, and then I'll talk to God. But if we really believe that God can handle what we cannot, why wouldn't we go to him first? I mean, just really think about that for a moment. If we really believed that God can handle those things that I cannot, why wouldn't that be the first place I go? And to be honest, I believe it's because the problem is a little deeper than just, I don't pray enough. I think the problem is a little deeper than just that we don't spend enough time in prayer. I think the problem starts because we don't believe enough. We don't trust enough. Perhaps we don't recognize who God really is. Because if we did, it would be no question. We'd go directly to him. If we really saw who he was, that would be our first place to go. perhaps, give me a little grace here, perhaps if you're making major decisions or trying to figure out hard situations, this passage puts it that this is a rare thing without talking to God, then perhaps you should examine your relationship with God. Because if you really recognize who he was, it'd be a no-brainer that I go to him. Faced with a rare situation, Daniel chose first to stop and seek God. Number 2, Daniel chose to thank God. Look at verse 19 through 23 with me. Then was the secret revealed unto Daniel. So they've just desired mercies of God, that they would not perish with the rest of the wise men. Then was the secret revealed unto Daniel in a night vision. Then Daniel blessed the God of heaven. Daniel answered and said, Blessed be the name of God forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his. And he changeth the times and the seasons. He removeth kings and setteth up kings. He giveth wisdom unto the wise, and knowledge to them that know understanding. He revealeth the deep and secret things. He knoweth what is in the darkness, and the light dwelleth with him. I thank thee and praise thee, O thou God of my fathers, who hast given me wisdom and might, and hast made known unto me now what we desired of thee, for thou hast now made known unto us the king's matter. I believe I'm going to move kind of quickly through this point, but let's think about this. Daniel thanked God despite being in the situation in the first place. A point could be made, and I know this because I've heard Christians argue this. A point could be made that had God not allowed me to be in this situation in the first place, we never would have been here. Had God not allowed me to be in this situation in the first place, I wouldn't have to deal with this. Why should I thank God when he's the reason I'm here? A point could be made. Daniel could have the argument, well, why did God allow the king to make this decree? Why did God give the king the dream? Why am I in Babylon in the first place? And rather than recognizing that God does everything for a purpose, we question him. We question him. That this would have never happened had God not allowed them to take me to Babylon. It's God's fault I'm in this mess. That's not what we see of Daniel. We don't see Daniel going to God saying, God, had you not taken me to Babylon, I wouldn't be facing this. And we see him desiring the mercies of God, meaning even in Babylon, he recognized he needed God's mercy. We see him desiring the mercies of God and thanking God. Daniel thanked God despite the fact it had not yet been resolved. I mean, you think about when Daniel is thanking God, verse 19 through 23, in these verses, the dream has now been revealed to him, which is great. But at this point, he's still on the hook to die with all the wise men. Just because he knows the dream doesn't mean the king's going to say, you know what, I take it back. I was going to have you all chopped up into pieces and your house made a dunghill. Nah. Like, just because God revealed the dream, just because they gave him the time to pray and he now can tell the dream, doesn't mean the king's going to reverse what he already said is going to happen. At this point, he now knows the dream, but he's far from out of harm's way. But he thanked God because he knew this was all part of God's plan and purpose. It reminds me of later on in the book of Daniel when the three are thrown into the furnace and their response is, but if not, that our God will save us, but if not, because like Daniel, they recognized it's all part of God's plan and purpose. Even if he doesn't rescue me right now. To this point, Daniel was not the one who the king had thought to call on. When he had the dream, he called all sorts of people to come in and tell him what the dream was and the interpretation. Daniel was not on that guest list. But now he is. Comes back to a very similar thread to the last point. Daniel trusted God. He recognized who God was. He thanked God despite that, because he recognized who God was. Daniel chose to pray. Daniel chose to thank God. Number 3, Daniel chose to give God the glory. Look at verse 24 through 30 with me. It says, "Therefore Daniel went in unto Arioch, whom the king had ordained to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He went and said thus unto him, Destroy not the wise men of Babylon. Bring me in before the king, and I will show unto the king the interpretation. Then Arioch brought in Daniel before the king in haste, and said thus unto him, I have found a man of the captives of Judah, that will make known unto the king the interpretation. The king answered and said unto Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, Art thou able to make known unto me the dream which I have seen, and the interpretation thereof? Then Daniel answered in the presence of the king and said, The secret which the king demanded cannot the wise men, the astrologers, the magicians, the soothsayers show unto the king. But there is a God in heaven that revealeth secrets, and maketh known to the king, or maketh known to the king Nebuchadnezzar what shall be in the latter days. Thy dream and the vision of thy head upon thy bed are these. As for thee, O king, thy thoughts come into my mind, or in thy mind upon thy bed, what should come to pass hereafter, and he that revealeth secrets maketh known to thee what shall come to pass. But as for me, this secret is not revealed to me for any wisdom that I have more than any living, but for their sakes that shall make known the interpretation of the king, and that thou mightest know the thoughts of thy heart." Now, Daniel makes it known that all the king's men couldn't do this. This is, he, like the others, this is a rare thing, king. No one else could do this. And the king asked him, well, can you? Daniel has the opportunity to take credit here. Twice in those verses, he points out to the king, not me. Verse 30, he talks about that it's not of me. The secret is not revealed to me for any wisdom that I have more than any living. Daniel has the opportunity to take credit. Daniel has the opportunity right here to make a name for himself. But what's his response? There is a God in heaven. Not me. There's a God in heaven. He takes the focus off of himself and puts it back on God. Daniel wasn't focused on making a name for himself. Daniel's focus was not for people to notice him. Daniel wasn't focused on praise or on notoriety or on recognition or on personal success. Daniel was only focused on pointing people to Christ. Let me just say this outright. That needs to be the focus of every Christian. It seems like this comes up often when I preach. God keeps bringing it to me, so we must not be getting this. As a child of God, it should not be about recognition. It should not be about people seeing how spiritual you are, or people recognizing what you do in the church, or people seeing how the ways that you serve. If that is your focus is wrong. No, it should be that what we do is pointing to Christ. That's also true. I mentioned in ministries and things like that. That's also true when you're facing that rare and hard situation, though. That the way I respond should be pointing people to the God of heaven. The answer is Daniel's response, I believe, is key to the way Daniel reacts to this entire situation. His response shows us why he isn't mad at the situation, because Daniel knew there is a God in heaven. His response shows us why Daniel could trust God and not try to defend himself, because Daniel knew there was a God in heaven. It shows why he could thank God despite what was happening all around him, because Daniel knew there is a God in heaven. As a child of God, that phrase could be your answer in every situation. This is rare, but there's a God in heaven. This is hard, but there's a God in heaven. I don't know what to do, but there's a God in heaven. If we lived by that, not using it like a, cliche, catchy motto or something, but actually lived like there was a God in heaven and pointed people to that God in heaven, it would change the way we go through life. It would change the way that we view and go through hard situations. If we actually lived, there's a God in heaven. Daniel chose to pray. Daniel chose to thank God. Daniel chose to give God the glory. And then lastly tonight, Daniel chose to do what God said. Look at verse 31 through 37 with me. 31 through 37, Thou, O king, sawest, and behold, a great image. This great image, whose brightness was excellent, stood before thee. The form thereof was terrible. This image's head was of fine gold, his breast and arms of silver, his belly and his thighs of brass, his legs of iron, his feet part iron and part of clay. Thou sawest till a stone was cut out without hands, which smote the image upon his feet, that were of iron and clay, and brake them to pieces. Then was the iron, the clay, the brass, the silver, and the gold broken to pieces together, and became like a chaff of the summer threshing floor, and the wind carried them away, that no place was found for them. And the great stone that smote the image became a great mountain, and filled the whole earth. This is the dream, and we will tell the interpretation thereof before the king. And he goes on. I won't go ahead and have us read all of it right now. Goes on with the interpretation of it. I don't want to take this too far, but just for a few minutes, because I think it's worth us seeing. Daniel is in this impossible situation where he doesn't know what he's going to do. The order has been made to have him killed. Everyone has already written this off as impossible. You think of the magicians and the soothsayers and the Chaldeans and all of them that were in the room originally who said, this can't be done. This is a rare thing. It's impossible. There's no man that can do this. This can't be done. They've already just come to terms with the fact that, well, we're all going to die now. They wrote it off as it's impossible, and the king's made his decree, so this is what's going to happen. Everyone else has written this off as impossible. His life is being threatened. He goes to God and gets God's leading and then follows it. What a novel concept. He doesn't get God's leading and then come up with his own plan. He doesn't get God's leading and then decide on what he thought was a better way. He doesn't get God's leading and then decide that it was too hard, because you can't tell me that what he's about to do is easy. He's about to go stand before the king, who has already said, you're going to die a terrible way, and tell the king the interpretation of his dream. The interpretation of the dream starts out sounding really good. You are a head of gold, and eventually you're going to get crushed and fall and get broken to pieces. The guy already wants you dead, has the power to kill you, and that's what you're going to tell him. Do you think this is going to go over well? No. Do you think this is an easy thing that Daniel's going to do? This is a hard message he has to give. But he followed God's leading. Hard or not? Because there is a God in heaven. I started the message or early on asking the question, what do we do? When we're faced with that rare and hard thing, what do we do? Go to God, thank him, point the glory to him, and then follow his leading. Wrapping this up, as I was studying this, I couldn't help but think of the song, Wherever He Leads, I'll Go. If you pay attention to the words of that song, it is not just saying, wherever he leads, I'll go, as long as it's easy. Wherever he leads, I'll go, as long as it makes sense to me. Wherever he leads, I'll go, as long as I'm comfortable. Or wherever he leads, I'll go, as long as it's what I want, or it makes me happy, or I'm not having lots of struggles. Or no. You pay attention to the words of that song. It talks about fire and stormy seas. not just easy times and easy places. The idea is I'm going to follow him even when it's hard. I'm going to find God's leading and then follow it. And then follow it. So, what do you do when in that situation that it is a rare thing? And in my power, I can't. Seek God, thank God, point to God, and then follow his leading. Let's pray. Lord, I want to pray that you will, Lord, help us to be able to grasp this. I think of this as I've been for continuing on with this series, and right now in the book of Daniel, been studying through the book of Daniel some of the situations that he finds himself in. And yet over and over we see the same pattern from Daniel. I use the example in chapter 2, but we can see this multiple times from him. Over and over we see the same pattern that, boy, it looks grim for Daniel, and if he were a nominal Christian, he'd probably go into panic mode and pick up his sword and want to fight. And instead, over and over, we see him go to you, thank you, point others to you, and then just follow wherever you lead. Lord, help us to have the type of relationship with you that is how we respond. That when we're in that rare thing, and in my power I can't, and I don't know, we just learn to seek you. To thank you for your goodness to us, to point others to you, and then just to follow your leading, even when it's hard. Pray this in your name. Amen. Let's go ahead and stand with heads bowed and eyes closed this evening. Men are getting ready to sing. An invitation song. I think we could start off the invitation exactly with the first decision that Daniel made, to seek God. It's pretty often that we are in those times that we look at it as the magicians, soothsayers, and all them did, and we say, boy, this is a rare thing. This is hard. No man can know the answer to it. You're right. But God can. Let's tonight, let's seek him. Thank him for what he has done. Point others to him.